So right now, we are on the very, very bottom of Daf He. So that's Daf He Amud Aleph. Very bottom of Daf He Amud Aleph. So, right, like we just explained, we did a bit of Chazar. We just explained that we're trying to find for the Rabbanan a source for Aseh Dochelot Aseh. We have for Tana Deber Bishmael from the words Tzemer Pishtim being extra in the pasuk, and we're able to use smuchim now since we have extra words in the pasuk and learn that the chiyuv of tzitzit overrides the isur of shanez. We learned from there aseh overrides the lo ta'aseh. Now, what about according to Rabbanan? So we tried to find the proof. So far, we've been able to weasel our way out of every attempted proof. So we're on the very bottom of Daf He Amud Aleph where it says Ella. It says Ella le'olam mikra kama. The Gemara says, you know what? Really, the source of the Chachamim of Rabbanan, who argue on Rishmael, is from that same original pasuk, from the pasuk of tzitzit. Imken lemakra tzitzit ta'aselach gidilim lamali. The Gemara says, remember, we had to, in order to be able to make this drasha, to say that, these two psukim, Shatnez and Tzitzit, are right next to each other, is coming to teach me that Tzitzit overrides Shatnez. We're looking for extra words in the pasuk to be able to make this drasha. So the Gemara says, okay, Chachamim also believe there's extra words, but not Tzemer Pishtim. Those words are not extra, not the wool and linen part. That you need, according to the Chachamim. But, right, because according to Tana Deber Bishmael, you didn't need it because anytime it says beged, it's automatically wool and linen. So those two words were extra. But according to Rabbanan, you need those words, so those are not the extra words. So what are the extra words? So the Gemara says, Imken lemakra tzitzit ta'aselach, gedilim lamali. The Torah could have said, tzitzit ta'aselach. Make for yourself tzitzit on the four corners of your garment. Why does it say gedilim? This is an unusual word. The fact that we're using this unusual word gives us the license to make the drasha and say, well, since these two psukim are right next to each other and there's an unusual word here, it's coming to teach us something. And we could learn an aseh overrides a lo ta'aseh. So the Gemara says, Shema mina la'afnuye. It must be that it's open, it's an available extra additional word. And therefore, I have a license now to make the drasha of smuchim, of two psukim that are next to each other, and learn that the aseh overrides the lo ta'aseh. So the Gemara says, no, it's not true, it's not extra. You know what we learned from this word gedilim? This word, l'shi'urahu da'ata. It's coming to teach me the shi'ur, the amount of strings that I need for tzitzit. Meaning, how do we know that you have to do 4 strings and you put it in the hole and it becomes 8? How do we know that? Where does that come from? It comes from this word, gedilim. Because gedil, right, there's 2 parts of the tzitzit. Gedil is the part that's like braided and knotted, and the anaf is the string part. So it says gedilim. Gedil means shnaim. The minimum amount of strings you could have to braid something or tie something is 2. So when it says gedil, that's a minimum of 2. Gedilim, you're doubling it now, making it plural, that's 4. So we learn from there that the amount of strings you use for tzitzit.
How we get gedil for 2?
Because a gedil means.
Gedil means single.
No, gedil, yes, but in order to make a gedil, you need a minimum of 2 strings. Because gedil means to braid something together, to braid or tie. So if it would have just said gedil, I would have thought 2 strings. It says gedilim, that means you double it, you get 4. So aseh gedil. Upatluhu mitocho, and you have to put it through and fold it over, and it becomes 8. So from the lashon of gedil, we learn from the lashon of gedilim, it's not extra. We need it to teach me the amount of strings, right? So the Gemara was saying, this word is extra, it's additional, it's an awkward word, and therefore that means we have a license to make a drasha here and learn aseh overrides a lo ta'aseh. To which the Gemara says, no, it's not extra. I need this word to teach me the amount of strings. So imken, I realize I'm not recording. Okay, whatever. Imken, le makra lo tilbash sha'adnes, tzemer u'pishtim. Yachdav lamali. The Gemara says, okay, you know which word is extra? The word yachdav. The pasuk could have just said, Lo tilbash shadnez, don't wear shadnez, tzemer upishtim, wool and linen. Yachdav is additional. I don't need the word yachdav. Don't wear shadnez, wool and linen. And then it says, make tzitzit. So the word yachdav is extra. That extra word gives me the license to make a drasha and say the aseh of tzitzit overrides. Because again, once we have an extra word, we can say, oh, these two psukim are next to each other. There's an extra word here. That means there's a drasha to be made. And we could learn aseh overrides lo ta'aseh. So yachdav lamali. Why do I have this word yachdav? Shma mina la'afnuye. It must be that it's an additional word. It's extra, and it's coming to teach me that I can make this drasha of smuchim. So the Gemara says, no, that word is also not extra. Va'akati mibayale. We need the word yachdav as well for a halacha. What halacha? Litokef shtei techivot chibur. To teach me that someone who's tochef shtei techivot, someone who stitches two stitches, that's when he violates shatnez. That's when he's making a connection in the beged. But utkifa achat eno chibur. But one stitch is not a chibur, is not a connection. Meaning, I need the word yachdav, that means together, to teach me that one stitch is not enough. That's not called yachdav. If a person does one stitch, of wool and linen, that's not considered yachdav. That's not considered together. If I would not have had the word yachdav, I would have thought guy does one stitch of wool and linen, then he can't wear it. He violated shatnez. We say no. It has to be two stitches, which means back and forth. Then he violates shatnez. But if a person just takes one string and plucks it through, that's not violating shatnez. Has to go in and out. Tochef shtei techifot. It goes in once, twice. That's shatnez. Because we learn that from the word yachdav, meaning together. So that word is also not extra. So the Gemara says, okay, imken lichtov rachmana lo tilbash tzemer upishtim yachdav. Shadnez lamali. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. We tried tzemer upishtim being the extra words. That only works according to Rabbi Yishmael. We tried yachdav being the extra word. That doesn't work. So let's try shatnez being the extra word. The Torah could have just said, don't wear wool and linen together. Why does it have to say shatnez? Shatnez lamali. Shmamina lafnuye. We want to say, shatnez, that word is an extra word. And we learn from the word shatnez that you can make a drasha here of smuchim.
What shatnez means?
Good. We're going to see in a moment. So the Gemara says, Va'akati mibayale. No, I need this word shatnez. Why? Ad sheyehe shua tavi venuz. Has to be shua, tavui, and nuz. Which means you don't violate the Isur of shatnez until it's shua. Shua means that the fabric, before you make it into strings, is combed out. It's smoothed out. And then tavui means it's spun into a string. And nuz means it's like woven together. So you have three, we call it three stages of making the fabric that need to be met in order for it to be shatnez. If a person just takes, wool, fur, and linen, and just doesn't make them into fabric, he kind of just like presses them together.
Has to be fabric.
Has to be
become as a fabric.
Yeah, it has to be shua,
So how
tavui, venuz.
Some of the string that they.
That's a fabric. That's fabric means string. Has to be made into strings and put together. But if it's just like pressed together or something, and made into some type of blanket or whatever, that's not an isur of shatnez, as far as this drasha is concerned. At least deoraita. Ad sheyesh shua tavui venuz. Has to be combed out, spun into strings. So again, shua means combed out, tavui means spun into strings, and nuz means it's woven. Okay, this is according to Rashi. Tosfos learns a little bit, drop differently, but let's go with Rashi. Right? It has to be those three stages have to be passed in order for the beged to become shadnez midoraita. So basically, bottom line, the word shadnez is not extra. So the Gemara says, okay, you know what? Ela kula mishadnez nafka. You know what? The word shadnez is extra. You can learn those three things, that it needs to be shua, tavui, and nuz, and additionally use the word shadnez that to teach me that it's an extra word, and I can make this drasha of smuchim. Now, how does that work? So we have a little bit of a machlok at Rashi and Tosfot here. Rashi says the reason the word shadnez is still extra is because it didn't need to say anything. Could have said kilaim. From the fact that it would have said kilaim, I would learn that it's an extra word. Then it says shadnez, shuat, tavui, venuz. We learn both things from shadnez. Tosfot learns a little bit differently. Tosfot actually, I think, is more pashut, pshat. Tosfot learns that it could have just said, don't wear shua, tavui, venuz. The fact that it combines it into this interesting word that we only have a couple times in the entire Chumash shows that it's coming to teach me a drasha. It could have just said lo tilbash shua tavu venuz. The fact that it makes up this word shatnez and makes it into an acronym, that shows that we have a license to make a drasha. That's kind of similar to an extra word. So this is the maskana of the Gemara. We finally got to the end of the road, at least when it comes to a regular aseh overriding a lo taseh. We started with this pasuk and we're ending with this pasuk. We learned from tzitzit, right? Tzitzit overrides shadnez. How do we know that? Because the two psukim are right next to each other. It says lo tilbash shadnez tzemer upishtim yachdav gedilim ta'aselach al arba kanfot kisutecha shetchaseba. It says don't wear shadnez, and then right next to it it says put on tzitzit. So we see that tzitzit overrides shadnez. In order to put tzitzit on the beged, you need to put wool onto a linen beged. You do it, right? You tzitzit overrides shadnez. Great. How do we know that? How come we can make this drasha? Because we have an extra word. What's the extra word? Shadnez. Even though we learned something else from that word, but it could have written it differently. The fact that it writes it like this teaches me that I am able to make a drasha. So, great. The Gemara says, beautiful. Ashkechan da'ati aseh v'dachi lo ta'aseh greda. We found the source that an aseh, a mitzvat aseh, overrides a regular mitzvat lo ta'aseh. Lo ta'aseh sheyesh bo karet, hecha ashkechan dedachi. But a lo ta'aseh that has karet, which is what we're dealing with. Again, we're dealing with arayot by yibum. Mm-hmm. So you have a mitzvah aseh to do yibum, but you have a lo ta'aseh of not being with your wife's sister. So which one overrides? So we have a source that a regular aseh overrides a regular lo ta'aseh. Now where do we have a source that a mitzvah aseh would override a lo ta'aseh that has karet, like arayot? So hecha ashkechan dedachi, where do we find that an aseh overrides this lo ta'aseh? De'itzrich alea lemesra, that we need a special drasha to teach me that don't do yibum, which means had I not had that special drasha, I would think do yibum, even to one's sister-in-law, or mother-in-law, or daughter, or any other one of the arayot that his brother could marry. V'chi tema nelif mimila. The Gemara says, okay, maybe you'll tell me like this. Let's learn from milah. Meaning, milah, what happens if a baby's born and the 8th day of his life is on Shabbat? So what do? You do a brit milah. Yeah. You can't make a chabura on Shabbat. You can't cause a wound on Shabbat. You shouldn't be able to do milah on Shabbat. So you see, the mitzvah of milah overrides the isur karet of Shabbat.
So the isur karet.
Mm-hmm. This is what we're trying to prove. Aseh overrides lo ta'aseh.
If you hurt yourself, cut yourself, karet.
Okay, so that's a bigger question. And what's the deoraita of milah? Maybe it shouldn't be deoraita. Maybe it's a chabura derabanan. Bringing blood as derabanan. That's a good question, but that's a separate question. So the Gemara says, "Mala mila sheken nechritu alea shlosh esrei britot." The Gemara says no. Mila is a very unique mitzvah raseh. You can't learn just because Mila overrides Shabbat doesn't mean every mitzvah raseh would override karet. Mila is a very unique mitzvah. What's unique about it? It says in the Chumash, in the parsha of Mila, 13 times it says brit. Hashem is koret 13 britot. Hashem made 13 covenants when it comes to Mila. So Mila is a big deal mitzvah. It's not just like any other mitzvah. So you can't learn from Mila to every other mitzvah that a mitzvah raseh would override even karet. A lo taseh that has karet. So the Gemara says, okay, mi Pesach. Let's learn from Pesach. Now, Pesach means Korban Pesach. If the Korban Pesach is brought on the 14th of Nisan, if the 14th of Nisan is Shabbat, you still bring a Korban Pesach. You bring a Korban Pesach, and that night you roast it and you eat it for your Seder. So you see the mitzvah of bringing Korban Pesach overrides the Isur Karet of Shabbat. Because you're shechting it on Shabbat.
All the Korban you could bring it on Shabbat.
Okay, good. Good question. We're kind of going to get to that, but not really. Meaning, you can't bring a proof from the Korbanot that Hashem tells you the Torah says bring on Shabbat. Meaning the Torah says bring...
Korban every day.
Okay, Korban Tamid we're going to get to. But the Torah says bring Korban Musaf on Shabbat. So the Hashem said bring it on Shabbat. There's no other way out. But let's say Pesach, the Torah doesn't say do it on Shabbat. We're saying that it overrides the Aseh of Pesach, of Korban Pesach, overrides the Isur of Shchita on Shabbat. So we want to learn from there that an Aseh overrides a Lo Ta'aseh that has Karet. So the Gemara says, no, not a good proof. Mala Pesach sheken Karet. Pesach itself is Karet. If someone does not bring a Korban Pesach, he gets Karet. It's one of the only Asehs. There's a very couple. We're going to see Asehs, mitzvot Aseh that have Karet. One of them is Korban Pesach. If a person violates the Aseh, he doesn't bring a Korban Pesach, he's over the Aseh of not bringing Korban Pesach. By not bringing Korban Pesach, that's Karet. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. Mitamid. Let's learn from Korban Tamid. Korban Tamid is brought every single day, rain or shine, 365 days a year, even on Shabbat. So you see that Korban Tamid overrides Shabbat. So the Gemara says, Mali Tamid Sheken Tadir. The Gemara says, no, that's different. That's something that, it's not something that comes up once in a while. It's something that comes up every single day. So that's a different type of mitzvah. But you can't learn from there to Yibum. This is something that has to be done every single day. Fine, so that overrides Shabbat. That overrides Karet. But a regular Aseh that comes up once in a while, that's not going to override an Isur Karet. So the Gemara says, okay, good. We just tried three things. We tried to learn from Milah. We said, no, that's different. We tried to learn from Pesach overrides Shabbat. No, that's different. Korban Tamid overrides Shabbat. No, that's different. So the Gemara says, okay, Mechada lo atya. We can't learn from one source. So Tete mitarti. Let's learn from two. Let's try to put two of these together. So the Gemara says, Mehai Tete. From which one, which two are we going to learn? Mimila Pesach. Let's say from Mila and Pesach, meaning Brit Milah and Korban Pesach both override Shabbat. So let's learn from the fact that those two override Shabbat. And it's true, Milah had 13 Britot and Pesach was Karet, but let's learn from them together that they override Shabbat. So any Aseh should override a Lo Ta'aseh even if there's Karet. So the Gemara says, no, you can't learn from those two, Sheken Karet. Both of those have Karet. If somebody refuses to bring a Korban Pesach, or if somebody refuses to get a Brit Milah, he's Chayav Karet. So the Gemara says, okay, so we can't learn from those two together. Let's try Let's try next step. Pesach v'tamid. Let's try the next two, Korban Pesach and Korban Tamid. Both of these override Shabbat. But what are we going to say? That, the Pesach has karet? Yeah, but Tamid doesn't have karet. What are we going to say? Tamid is something that is it's an everyday thing. Pesach isn't an everyday thing. So put the two together. You learn even though there's no karet for the aseh and it's not an everyday thing, it overrides Shabbat. So the Gemara says no. You can't learn from those two. Why not? Sheken tzorech gavoa, because they're both types of korbanot. You can't learn from types of korbanot to other mitzvot aseh. So we still don't have a good source that an aseh would override a lo taseh that's so severe that it has karet like Shabbat. So the Gemara says, okay, mi mila v'tamid. Mila is not something that is mila is not something that's type of korban. So the Gemara says, so therefore let's learn from mila and tamid. They both override Shabbat. So we'll learn from there that an aseh overrides even a lo taseh that has karet. So the Gemara says, Sheken yeshnu lifnei adibur. Mila and Korban Tamid were both before Matan Torah. Before the Torah was given, these mitzvot existed. So you can't learn from...
Existed Korban Tamid?
Yeah, so the Gemara says, okay, let's read one more line. V'aliba demanta amar ola sheikruvu Yisrael b'midbar ola tamid hava. It's going according to the opinion that the Korban Olah that was brought in the Midbar before Matan Torah was... Yeah, they had no, before that they had it was the pasuk says no, before that it said, the pasuk says vayalo alu olot vayigishu shlamim. So that olot was a korban tamid according to one opinion. They brought it as a korban tamid. So you see that this concept of this mitzvah was already being kept. It already existed before Matan Torah. So you can't learn from those mitzvot to other mitzvot. So Mila, we have by Avraham Avinu already being commanded, and Korban Olah, they brought in the Midbar before Matan Torah. So these are things that existed. They predated Matan Torah. You can't bring a proof from mitzvot that predate Matan Torah. So the Gemara says, okay, Mikuluhu nami, Sheken yeshnan lifnei adibur. Really, the truth is all of them. Pesach was when they left Mitzrayim, before Matan Torah. Olot, we just said also, this pasuk, Vayalu Olot. And Milah was already commanded to Avraham Avinu. So even if you want to put all these three mitzvot together and you say, oh, see, all these three different types of mitzvot override Shabbat, so any mitzvah aseh should override something with karet, the Gemara says you can't, because those are limited to examples of mitzvot that precede Matan Torah. So we have no proof from here that other mitzvot will override karet. The Gemara says, Ela itzterich. Rather, I need the focus here is always the word aleha. I need the word aleha to teach me that yibum overrides arayot overrides yibum, meaning that you don't do yibum to the arayot. Why? Salka da'atacha amina te'ete mikibud avaim. I may have thought to learn from kibud avaim that yibum, that a mitzvah aseh will override a lo ta'aseh that has karet, and therefore I would think yibum would override the isur karet of arayot. So why would I learn from kibud avaim that a mitzvah aseh overrides a lo ta'aseh of karet? Detanya, it says in a braita, yachol yeh kibud avaim doche Shabbat. Very famous braita. I would have thought that kibud avaim would override Shabbat. That if the parent says to do an isur on Shabbat, I have a hava mina, I would think that a person would do it. So Talmud lomar, ish imo v'aviv tirau ve'ed shabbatotai tishmoru, and then the pasuk says, ani Hashem. It says, person has to fear his mother and father, ve'ed shabbatotai tishmoru, keep Shabbat, ani Hashem. So we learn from the words, ani Hashem, kulechem chayavin bichvodi, that parents are also chayav in the kavod of Hashem. So we're chayav in the kavod of parents, but everyone is chayav in the kavod of Hashem. So if the parents say to violate the word of Hashem, then we don't do it. So the Gemara says it doesn't. But we needed a special drasha to teach me that. So the Gemara says, so the proof is from the fact that we needed a special drasha. That means without the drasha, what would I have thought? the aseh of kibud avayim would violate the lo ta'aseh of Shabbat. So, which is karet, right? So I would think would override, not violate. Sorry, I would think that we learn from here that the aseh of yibum overrides the lo ta'aseh of arayot. Right? Again, we need a special drasha to teach me if a parent says to violate Shabbat, don't do it. Why do we need a special drasha? It must be that we would have assumed that the aseh of kibud avim overrides the lo ta'aseh of Shabbat. So my love damar le'shechodli basheli, isn't the case that the father is telling the son to do an isur karet on Shabbat? The father is saying, do shchita for me, cook for me, meaning he's doing an isur karet on Shabbat, and still we need a special drasha. Ta'amadek v'ta'amadek hatav rachamana et shabbatotai tishmoru. Halav hachidachi. The whole reason that we know that the son is not supposed to listen to the father is because we have this whole drasha. But if not for this drasha, then I would assume that the chiyuv of kibud avayim is doche the lo ta'aseh of doing shchita or bishul on Shabbat. So again, if a person cooks on Shabbat, karet. If a father says, go cook for me on Shabbat, right? Father says, go cook for me on Shabbat. The son, the Torah says, we have a special drasha to teach me, not allowed to do it. Okay, and if I wouldn't have had the drasha, what would I have said? I would have thought to say that the mitzvah aseh of kibud avim overrides the lo ta'aseh of not cooking on Shabbat. So if father says, cook for me on Shabbat, you got to do it. That's what I would have thought. So you see the fact that there's a drasha teaches me that without the drasha I would have thought that the aseh overrides the lo ta'aseh, even when there's karet. So the Gemara says no. We'll just read the next two words. The Gemara says lo, no, that's not true. Lav de mechamer. We're talking about a lav of Shabbat that does not have karet. Lav of mechamer is when a person's like doing malacha with his animal. He puts a load on his animal and he leads his animal to carry the load or something like that. That lav is a little bit different. I think it comes up in the Gemara. I think the Gemara talks about it a little bit more, but that lav is different. That's not karet. There's no chiyuv karet by mechamer. So the Gemara says no. That's the case that we're talking about. So the Gemara is able to docha that raya, and then the Gemara continues with it tomorrow. B'ezras Hashem, next Amud for tomorrow.